Imagine slowly beginning to doubt your own memory, your own judgment, even your own sanity. You clearly remember a conversation, yet someone insists it never happened. You feel hurt by a comment, yet you are told you are too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. Over time, the ground beneath your feet starts to feel unstable. You begin to question not only what happened, but who you are. This psychological manipulation is known as gaslighting, and it is far more common than many people realize. To understand why people gaslight others and how to stop it, we have to look deeper than the surface behavior. Gaslighting is not just lying or arguing. It is a systematic pattern of making someone doubt their perception of reality, and it usually comes from a complex mix of insecurity, fear, power dynamics, and learned behavior. At its core, gaslighting is about control. When someone gaslights another person, they are attempting to shape that person's perception of reality in a way that benefits them. This might be to avoid accountability, to maintain dominance, to protect their ego, or to keep the other person dependent. In many cases, the person who gaslights is not sitting down and consciously planning to distort reality in a calculated way. Sometimes they are, but often it is more subtle and deeply rooted in their own psychological defenses. They may feel threatened by criticism, terrified of abandonment, or ashamed of their own flaws. Rather than face those uncomfortable feelings, they distort the narrative. One major reason people gaslight others is insecurity. When someone has a fragile sense of self, even mild feedback can feel like a personal attack. If their partner says, "It hurt me when you said that," instead of reflecting on their behavior, they may respond with, "I never said that. You're imagining things." Admitting fault would mean confronting their own imperfection, which feels intolerable. By denying reality, they protect their self-image. In this way, gaslighting becomes a defense mechanism. It shields them from shame, guilt, and vulnerability. Unfortunately, that shield comes at the cost of another person's mental stability. Another common driver is the desire for power and dominance. In some relationships, particularly those with unhealthy power imbalances, gaslighting is used as a tool to maintain control. If you can make someone doubt their memory and judgment, you make them easier to influence. They may start relying on you to interpret events. They may stop challenging you. Over time, their independence erodes. This dynamic can show up in romantic relationships, families, workplaces, and even friendships. In extreme cases, gaslighting is part of a broader pattern of emotional abuse. The manipulator gains a sense of superiority and authority by positioning themselves as the rational one while portraying the other person as unstable or confused. Fear also plays a significant role. Fear of losing a relationship can drive someone to rewrite reality. For example, if someone cheats and is confronted, admitting the truth could mean the end of the relationship. So they may say, "You're paranoid. That never happened. You're overthinking everything." The immediate goal is to avoid consequences. They may justify this to themselves as protecting the relationship, but in reality, they are protecting themselves from discomfort and accountability. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being exposed. All of these can fuel gaslighting behavior. Learned behavior is another powerful factor. Many people who gaslight grew up in environments where emotional manipulation was normalized. If a child was constantly told, "That didn't happen," or "You're too sensitive," when expressing feelings, they may internalize that as a normal way to handle conflict. They may not even recognize their behavior as manipulative. It feels familiar. It feels like how relationships work. Without conscious awareness and effort, people tend to repeat the patterns they experienced early in life. This does not excuse gaslighting, but it helps explain why it persists across generations. There is also the element of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort we feel when our actions conflict with our self-image. Most people like to see themselves as good, fair, and reasonable. When their behavior contradicts that self-image, they experience psychological tension. Gaslighting can be an unconscious attempt to reduce that tension. If I believe I am a kind person, but I just said something cruel, I have two options. I can admit I was unkind, or I can convince myself and others that the comment was harmless and the other person is exaggerating. By reframing the situation, I protect my identity as a good person. The distortion of reality becomes a way to preserve self-coherence. Sometimes, gaslighting is not malicious, but stems from emotional immaturity. Emotionally immature individuals struggle to tolerate discomfort, take responsibility, or empathize deeply with others. When confronted with someone else's pain, they may feel overwhelmed. Instead of engaging in a vulnerable conversation, they dismiss or invalidate. You're making a big deal out of nothing is easier than saying, "I'm sorry I hurt you." In this sense, gaslighting can be a shortcut to avoid emotional labor. It shuts down the conversation and shifts the focus away from their behavior. Cultural and societal influences can also reinforce gaslighting. In some environments, certain groups are routinely told that their experiences are exaggerated or invalid. When a person repeatedly hears that their perception is unreliable, it creates fertile ground for gaslighting. Social hierarchies and stereotypes can amplify this dynamic. The person in a position of authority may automatically be seen as more credible, while the other person's perspective is dismissed. Over time, this dynamic can become internalized, making it even harder to challenge. Understanding why people gaslight is only half the equation. The other half is recognizing how to stop it, both as someone experiencing it and as someone who may unknowingly engage in it. The first step is awareness. Gaslighting thrives in confusion. When you can clearly name what is happening, you begin to reclaim your footing. If you find yourself frequently doubting your memory after conversations with a particular person, or if your concerns are consistently minimized and reframed as flaws in your personality, that is a red flag. Awareness breaks the spell of subtle manipulation. For someone experiencing gaslighting, grounding yourself in evidence can be powerful. Writing down events shortly after they happen helps anchor your memory. Saving messages, keeping notes, or even speaking to a trusted friend about what occurred can provide an external reference point. This is not about building a case. It is about maintaining your connection to reality. Gaslighting often works by isolating the person and eroding their confidence. External perspectives can restore clarity. When someone you trust says, "No, that sounds hurtful," you're not crazy, it counters the narrative that your feelings are invalid. Setting boundaries is another crucial step. When someone denies your experience, you can respond by calmly asserting your reality without getting pulled into endless debates. For example, "I remember it differently, and this is how it felt to me." You do not need their agreement to validate your perception. Boundaries also involve deciding what behavior you will and will not tolerate. If the pattern continues despite clear communication, you may need to limit contact or reevaluate the relationship. In cases of severe emotional abuse, professional support and safety planning may be necessary. For individuals who recognize gaslighting tendencies in themselves, the path forward begins with radical honesty. Ask yourself what you are protecting when you deny someone else's experience. Are you avoiding shame? Are you afraid of losing control? Are you unwilling to admit you were wrong? Self-reflection requires courage. It may help to pause during conflicts and notice your immediate reaction. If your instinct is to say, "That never happened," consider whether you are reacting defensively rather than truthfully. Slowing down can interrupt automatic patterns. Developing emotional regulation skills is essential. Gaslighting often happens in moments of heightened emotion. When we feel attacked, we may lash out or deny. Learning to tolerate discomfort without deflecting it allows for more constructive responses. Techniques such as deep breathing, taking a break before responding, and practicing mindfulness can create space between feeling and reaction. In that space, accountability becomes possible. Instead of saying, "You're too sensitive," you might say, "I didn't realize that hurt you. Can you tell me more?" Empathy is a powerful antidote to gaslighting. When you genuinely try to understand another person's perspective, you are less likely to dismiss it. Empathy does not mean you have to agree with every detail of their memory. It means acknowledging their emotional reality. Two people can remember the same event differently. That does not mean one of them is insane. It means human perception is complex and subjective. By validating feelings even when interpretations differ, you foster trust rather than erode it. Communication skills also matter. Many conflicts escalate because people frame their experiences as objective facts rather than personal perceptions. Saying, "You always ignore me," invites defensiveness. Saying, "I felt ignored when you were on your phone during dinner," opens a dialogue. Similarly, when responding, it helps to focus on curiosity rather than rebuttal. "Help me understand how you saw that" is more constructive than "That's not what happened." Healthy communication creates room for multiple perspectives without invalidating anyone's sanity. Therapy can be transformative for both victims and perpetrators of gaslighting. For someone who has been gaslighted, therapy can rebuild self-trust. A skilled therapist provides validation and helps untangle distorted narratives. For someone who gaslights, therapy can uncover the underlying fears and insecurities driving the behavior. Often, patterns of manipulation are linked to unresolved trauma or attachment wounds. Addressing those root causes reduces the need for defensive distortions. It is also important to distinguish between intentional gaslighting and normal disagreements. Not every conflict where two people remember things differently is gaslighting. Human memory is fallible. People misremember details all the time. The key difference lies in the pattern and intent. Gaslighting involves a consistent attempt to undermine another person's sense of reality, often paired with minimizing, deflecting, and blaming. It leaves the target feeling chronically confused and self-doubting. Healthy disagreement, on the other hand, allows for mutual respect and the possibility that both people may be partially mistaken. Stopping gaslighting in a relationship requires mutual willingness. If one person is committed to control and refuses accountability, change becomes extremely difficult. In such cases, the healthiest choice may be distance. No amount of communication can fix a dynamic where one person is determined to dominate reality. However, in relationships where both parties are open to growth, transformation is possible. It requires humility, patience, and consistent effort. Education plays a broader societal role as well. When people learn to recognize manipulation tactics, they are less vulnerable to them. Teaching emotional intelligence, Critical thinking and conflict resolution from a young age can prevent these patterns from taking root. Encouraging open dialogue about feelings without shame fosters resilience. When people grow up in environments where their emotions are acknowledged rather than dismissed, they are less likely to either gaslight or accept gaslighting as normal. Another important element in stopping gaslighting is rebuilding self-trust. When someone has been repeatedly told that their perception is flawed, they may lose confidence in their intuition. Reconnecting with that inner voice takes time. Practices like journaling, meditation, and self-reflection can strengthen awareness of your own thoughts and feelings. Paying attention to how your body responds in certain interactions can also be revealing. Chronic tension, anxiety, or confusion around a particular person may signal that something is off. Trusting those signals is an act of self-protection. Support networks are invaluable. Gaslighting often thrives in isolation. When you are cut off from alternative viewpoints, the manipulator's narrative becomes dominant. Maintaining friendships, family connections, and community ties creates a buffer. Diverse perspectives help you reality check experiences. Even online communities centered on mental health and personal growth can offer validation and insight. Knowing you are not alone reduces the power of manipulation. Ultimately, gaslighting is about distortion. It distorts reality, responsibility, and trust. Stopping it requires restoring clarity. Clarity comes from awareness, boundaries, accountability, empathy, and support. It requires both inner work and relational work. For those who gaslight, it means confronting uncomfortable truths about oneself. For those who are gaslighted, it means reclaiming the authority to define one's own experience. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect for each person's perception. They allow room for disagreement without attacking the other's sanity. They prioritize understanding over dominance. When someone says, "That hurt me," the response in a healthy dynamic is curiosity and care, not dismissal. When mistakes are made, accountability strengthens trust rather than weakening it. The goal is not to win the narrative but to connect through honesty. If you suspect you are being gaslighted, remember that confusion is often the first signal. Do not ignore persistent self-doubt that arises only in certain interactions. Pay attention to patterns rather than isolated incidents. Seek outside perspectives. Document events. Set clear boundaries, and if necessary, create distance from those unwilling to respect your reality. Your perception matters. Your feelings are valid. Protecting your mental clarity is not selfish. It is essential. If you recognize gaslighting tendencies in yourself, approach that realization with responsibility rather than shame. Shame can lead to further defensiveness. Responsibility leads to growth. Acknowledge the behavior. Apologize sincerely when you invalidate someone's experience. Practice sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it through denial. Learn healthier conflict skills. Growth is possible when there is genuine commitment to change. Gaslighting is damaging because it attacks the foundation of psychological stability, trust in one's own mind. When that trust is undermined, everything else becomes shaky. But awareness and intention can rebuild what manipulation erodes. By understanding the roots of gaslighting, insecurity, fear, desire for control, learned patterns, cognitive dissonance, emotional immaturity, we gain the power to interrupt it. By cultivating empathy, accountability, and clear communication, we create relationships where truth is not a weapon but a bridge. In the end, stopping gaslighting is not just about calling out manipulation. It is about fostering environments where honesty feels safe, where vulnerability is not punished, and where multiple perspectives can coexist without turning into battles over sanity. It is about choosing integrity over ego, connection over control, and courage over comfort. When individuals commit to that choice, the cycle of distortion can end, and trust in ourselves and in each other can begin to heal.